Hello everybody and welcome to my first set of video tutorials. This section of tutorials will be covering Apple's Objective-C programming language that extends between their iOS and Mac OS X platforms. These video tutorials will be for the advanced users that already know how to program in some other language, like C++, C#, or even just general regular C. These tutorials are going to take what you already know and they're going to mold it into the realm of Objective-C, how it works, and all of that. These tutorials are set to go quickly versus my other tutorials, which go more in, I don't want to say more in depth, but there's a lot more verbiage and talking in between each thing that I do. All right, so let's begin. I'm going to already assume that many of you already know how to download Xcode. If you need to know how to do that, you can view my other tutorials. Like I said, these tutorials that I'll be doing with you guys are intended to go quickly and to cover the patches and the holes that many of you have moving to this language because it's so different than any of the other languages out there. So to begin, go to File, New, and then you want to select Project. Once that opens, there's two different types of applications that you can develop. You can develop for iOS and you can develop for Mac OS X. You can also create graphical user interfaces for both of these platforms. However, at the moment, I'm just trying to teach Objective-C. We will get into Cocoa and UI Kit, as well as, I forgot what the one for Mac OS X is, but it's very similar. We'll get into those later when I merge the beginners with you guys together. But for now, I want to just keep it command line, focus on Objective-C as a language itself. Once we get past that, we'll move forward. All right, so we'll click Next. We'll have this window come up. And for product name, you want to type the name of your application. I'm going to just call it My Application. And then under Type, notice you can change the type of application you want to develop for. These couple right here are basically just for different types of foundations that you can base your code off of. Certain APIs will come out of them. However, we want to do Foundation. Foundation is basically the underlying APIs that allow this whole program to run. See, you're really coding in C. However, these added APIs make it to where you can program in Objective-C. Also, you want to enable automatic reference counting. Automatic reference counting is kind of like garbage collection, but it's not. In garbage collection, you have a program that sweeps through your memory, and then it sees if there's anything in there that is not being used, not being pointed to, and it wipes it out. Automatic reference counting keeps an incremental number of pointers, and once they fall out of the scope, they get deleted from memory. So you don't have a program that's making sure you manage memory. It's just viewing increments and decrements of pointers that are holding memory. Okay, so let's move forward and hit Create. All right, so this is going to pop up. This window is actually very simple to use and familiar for those of you that program in C and C++. You come in at main, being able to pass arguments and const chars. However, it's not going to be necessarily the same because immediately this takes over your application and it no longer becomes what it is before. It now becomes Objective-C. So to start, let's run real quick just to show you what it's going to do. As many of you already know, it's going to output hello world under this output section. Pretty simple. All right, so let's go from there. And some of you may be wondering what auto release pool is. Auto release pool is pretty much saying anything that's in between that block of code is going to be handled with automatic reference counting. Since this whole project needs to be coded in automatic reference counting, you don't want to be coding outside of this. So everything, all object creations, anything you're going to do, keep it inside this block. Okay? Now, I want to cover NSLog real quick so you guys know how to use it, and then we'll move forward from there. So NSLog is very simple in that it takes a string of const chars, outputs it. Nothing more to it. All right. However, it's also a lot like the C printf API in that you can do commas and add objects afterwards. So for example, I could type something as simple as saying my name, and I could give it %at. That's pretty much saying I'm going to put an object there. In Objective-C, you know how you guys are usually used to literals like integers, characters, stuff like that, and strings, maybe const chars. Well, we don't use any of those in Objective-C. I mean, at least we're not supposed to. So for instance, what you guys are actually going to want to do here is, let's say you want to put a name. Well, you can type NSString, and then you can have a pointer with a variable name, and you can call it my name, and you can set it. Now, to set any block of text, you have to follow it with an @ symbol. The @ symbol is pretty much saying this is going to be an NSString, but it's a string literal. So it's not really a string literal, because if it was a string literal, it wouldn't have the @ sign before it. However, it's not a string literal. It's actually an NSString that's, So let's just go from there, and we can type Jared, okay? So now I want to put comma, my name. And you can put as many commas as you want. This takes an infinite amount of arguments. It's kind of like arg count, where you pass in an array of arguments. It's just going to keep going. And I'm going to run that, and it's going to say my name, Jared. You can do it with other things as well, as I'm sure you could figure out. Just real quick, I could type NS number, and I could type my age, and I could go NS number with int, and I could type 20. And then I can also say, and my age is %. And this is interesting. Some of you may say, I want to put %u or something for integer. Well, actually, you don't. You want to do object. The reason is NSString is a class. NSNumber is a class. They're both classes. They're not literals. So they take objects, and NSLog knows how to deal with them. So we're going to go from there, and we're going to type my age. So now it's going to say my name is Jared, and my age is 20. There you go. If you look down there, my name is Jared and my age is 20. If we continue, we can also see, many of you may be stumped on this part right here. And you may also be wondering, well, if this is a class, don't we have to allocate it? Well, you really don't. You can throw stuff in there. It has what's called a class method, and it'll throw it into this NSString and this NSNumber. However, NSNumber is cool. In a lot of other programming languages, you have to deal with longs, unsigned 32-bit integers, 16-bit, 64-bit, etc. NSNumber takes care of all of that. You may have noticed when I typed NSNumber, number with int, there was also other things that popped up. Number with bool, number with characters, number with short, number with etc. So this takes care of all that. Now, this part may be confusing to some of you coming from a different language. It's actually not that bad. You're kind of saying you have to have a bracket to say that you're about to call a method of a class. Okay, so what I'm doing is I'm saying take the NSNumber class and call its class method, not its instance method, but its class method, and give it 20. So NSNumber is now holding an integer, and this is the literal that we're passing, and it's going to go in as a 32-bit integer into NSNumber as a class. So it's probably a variable or a property or something like that inside of NSNumber. All right, so let's move forward and let's talk about something else. I want to go ahead and now talk about classes real quick and how those work. Like I told you, we have instance methods and we also have class methods. Real quick, instance methods are what you're used to. You create an object and they write to that object, etc. Class methods are more like static methods. So in Java, in C++ and C#, you know how you have static methods that don't have to actually be initialized. They can just be used. Well, that's what a class method is. However, in this, they're separated. You don't type static. You can do, they're done differently, and I'll show you. So to create a new class, go to File, New, File, and choose Objective-C Class. Type in whatever you want. In this case, we're going to make a gradebook. Actually, let's not even... Yeah, let's do a gradebook. My beginner tutorials, I was keeping it simple. Let's cover a little bit more advanced topics in this. So we're going to call this one gradebook. And you're going to want to subclass NSObject. Basically, by subclassing NSObject, it's going to allow you to access arrays and all of the things that an object should have. I mean, you can access them with NS Foundation, which is what, not NS Foundation, but Foundation, which is the core of what you're running. NSObject just basically allows you to create an object. I don't really want to get into more than that. So call it gradebook, hit next. Create it. You can change the directory, change the grouping. Grouping would be like these folders and stuff. And hit create. And let's also create another one. And let's call it person. We're going to put a person inside of the gradebook. So a gradebook is going to contain an array with a bunch of persons in it that have their name, their age, and the grade that they're going to get. All right, so let's start by dealing with person. And notice you have a header file and an implementation file. Very similar to very similar to C++. If you're not familiar with header and implementation files, I'll go over it right now. Anything in the header is pretty much public. Anything in the implementation is private unless you declared it in the header file. I will go over that right now. Let me do that. So in interface, we're going to create a couple of different things. I'm going to make a property, and you can you can do what you can create instance variables. However, in Objective-C, we don't like to do that because property is a whole lot nicer. For example, I'll show you a quick instance variable, and we're not going to do the rest of the program like this. But for example, I could say ns_string my name. However, if I go into person.in, well, hold on, let's not even do that. Let's just go back to main. If I import, by the way, don't do includes. You can do includes, but includes are for C files and C++ files. Do import for Objective-C. If you import gradebook, if you input person.h, you'll notice you can't go person, my person equals person, Alec, and it. I'll cover what that means in a sec. But you can't do, what did I call it? My name. Notice my name's not available. And you also can't, remember I told you about, you can call methods with, notice you can't do that. And the reason you can't do that is Objective-C requires that you create instance methods to write and to read instance variables. So for example, if I wanted to create an instance method, you do it outside of these parentheses, okay? Anything inside those parentheses is instance variables. So outside of the parentheses, I'll create an instance method. An instance method is defined by this minus sign. A instance variable will have a plus sign, like that. And like I said, instance variables is very similar, class variables is very similar to static methods, all right? Well, we're not gonna be doing that right now. We're gonna be dealing with instance methods which require initialization. So I'm gonna call this set my name, okay? Actually, I want to call it different. I'm going to call it make my name because you'll see in a second. And then I can go, oh, real quick, I have to bring in, hold on. Okay, let's see here. I'm so sorry, guys. I paused the video for a second. I was so confused. You don't put the allocation inside of that method. I'm so sorry. Okay. So I meant to do this in main, like that. Okay. All right. So basically, what you're doing is you're allocating room, and then you're initializing this class. We don't have an initializer at the moment. However, we're not going to need one for this. So now, if I want to set the age. What did I call it? I called it title. So I can go my person set title. Now notice I didn't type set. It automatically added that for me, and it does that because it basically it doesn't want you to have to say title.add or title.etc. Set gets added before every property if you want to set something to it. You can also override it and manually do work, but basically you can actually make an instance method for it if you wanted to, if you want to do some things while you called that method. However, in this case, we're not going to do that. So this will actually set it, and then I can call it by doing NSLog. And then make these so I can, my person, and I called it title. Okay, so if I run that, it's going to say Jared. So I created an object, and then I passed it the text Jared, and I outputted the title. Pretty simple. So now let's go ahead and move forward and create a gradebook. All right, so now we're going to finish defining our person class. I'm going to get rid of this instance variable because we're no longer going to be using instance variables. We're going to be using properties. Change that to my name. And then I'm going to create another property for this person. And another property, non-atomic, strong pointer, NS number, my grade. And we're going to continue. That looks good. So the person class is very, very simple. Have nothing in implementation. My name, my age, my grade. It's pretty good. So now we're going to need to do a gradebook. And I'm going to make a instance method for the gradebook. Let's do it in the header file first. Okay. Actually, I'm going to type enter new. How about this? Add new person with information. In Objective-C, we like to type things out. We don't really care about keeping things short, sweet, and making hints. The language is actually all about readability and understanding. And it's not really about keeping it simple and short. It's about readability. Because if you don't, you'll notice when you create really long stuff, the code does not read very well. It's very interesting, but it really just doesn't. So we got to actually be very careful when we create this stuff and make it just very English. All right. So the first thing is I'm going to pass an NS string. I'm going to call it, I'm so sorry. I freak out with how I name things. I'm going to call this a name, and we're also going to pass with grade, NS number, a grade, and then we're also going to type with age, NS number, age. I don't think that's right. I think it's an age, but you know what? Keep it simple. All right, so let's go over what this is, because most of you are used to having this something like void add new person with information, string, a name, and then you would go comma, int grade, int age. All right, well, let's kind of compare what we're doing here. So in Objective-C, you're calling this function add a new person with information. You're saying you're going to take a string. It's called a name. Okay, with the grade, this is what you're going to call. This is what's going to show up when you're typing, passing things into this method. This is what you're actually going to use when you in your method. All right, so this is what is going to be shown when you call the method. This is what's going to be used when you use the method. Same with this. This is going to be shown when you call the method. This is going to be used when you use the method. All right, so keep that in mind. Delete that little block. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a new person with information. Now, the next thing I want to do is I want to actually go up. I want to create a property. And the property that I'm going to be making is going to be non-atomic, and it's going to be strong, and it's going to be an NS mutable array. And I'm going to call it my people. All right. For some of you, mutability is a new term, and I'm going to go over that right now. Mutability is saying that once you create something, or once you create a class, you can change what's in it. If I just typed NSArray, that is a static array. Once I create it, I'm done. There's no adding to it. I have to actually, if I want to add something, I have to read from that array, and then I have to kill that array from memory and then create a new one. But you know what? We're dealing with a very high-performing system. You want to use NS arrays when you really care about efficiency, but I mean, we're doing something so efficient and simple at the moment. There's not really a reason to use anything but a mutable array. So for simplicity's sake, make an NS mutable array. Okay? So now we have two things. We have our array, and we have add new person with information. Let's copy this. Go to our implementation. Paste that, delete the semicolon. Continue. And now what we're going to do is I'm going to add a new person into my people. So I'm going to say my people. Now here's one, add object. Now I want you to see this code heading. Did you see how ID is kind of like a void star? It allows you to pass in any type of object. Okay, it basically means it doesn't know if it's a number, it doesn't know if it's a character, it doesn't know if it's a string, it doesn't know. Pass in any object you want. Well, in this case, I'm going to pass in a person. However, I haven't said what that person is, so let's delete that real quick. Actually, I'll just comment it. And now I'm going to create a person. To do that, I need to import person. Person.h. I'm going to say person, my person equals person, allocate that in the heap, initialize it, we're good. Go back to this, my people. Actually, let's not do that. Well, I can do this. My person. Oops. Okay. Now you get an error, and it's going to say use of undeclared identifier my people. Did you mean my people? Well, you do. In Objective-C, this is kind of strange. It's going to be hard for me to explain, but notice how you called this my people. However, in implementation, it wants you to use underscore my people. I'm trying to remember if I can just say equals underscore my people and see if that'll freak out. It will freak out, never mind. But basically, the only time you can actually call my people like this without an underscore is when you're doing it outside of implementation, like if I'm calling it from main. All right. However, while I'm inside this class, it wants me to call it with an underscore before that property. I'm not entirely sure why. I think it's because it's just so the compiler can differentiate things. But anyhow, just for simplicity's sake, put an underscore there and call it my people, add an object, my person. All right. Now we need to put things in the person. So I'm going to go my person, set my name. Actually, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do that part. Set my name and set it to a name. Okay, remember I told you how this will show up when the person's typing it in, and this is actually what you use. So let me show you. So then I'll also go my person, set my age, and I'll go age. My person, set my grade, a grade. So I'm creating all these things, and then I'm allocating it. And notice if I try to take my person and I try to call deallocate, it's going to error on you, and it's going to say ART forbids explicit message send of dealloc. And the reason it's doing that is we're using automatic reference counting. It knows the memory management. It knows once we go through this statement that my person is no longer going to be used, and it's going to delete it. You don't actually have to delete this from memory. ARC will take care of it for you. Okay? So add new person with information. Now added this person to the gradebook. So if we go back to main, instead of importing person right here, let's input gradebook.h. All right? And inside of the auto release pool, we'll type gradebook, my gradebook equals gradebook, allocate in the heap, initialize this method. Okay. And then we're going to go my gradebook, add new person with information, Jared. I'm a good student. I have a 95 in the class, and I'm 20 years old. Now, once again, can't forget that @ symbol. It'll freak out on you if you keep doing that. Now, here's a really fun and interesting thing of what just happened. Okay, notice you still have an error. And the error is saying, well, you should have an error. You have an error boat right here, but it's calling this first. So the reason you have an error is you're passing in a literal into what you said was going to be a number, okay, an NS number, which is a class. So what you have to do is instead of just putting 95 there, you need to put blocks, and you just say NS number with, in this case, I'm going to do a float so I can have decimals. So I'm going to put 99.325. Okay, that's my grade. And right here, I'm going to go same thing. I'm going to go NS number with int 20. And you can go off like this. A lot of times when you go off one line, we like to, here, let me show you. We programmers like to take from the beginning call and shift down like that, and maybe even give it another tab, a couple tabs. Keeps it clean. And that'll call correct because it'll call until it hits the semicolon statement. And keep going. We can add another person in here. So let's copy this text. No reason in redoing it. And this time I'm going to add Mark. Mark's a horrible student. We're going to say he has a 57 in the class. Actually, let's just keep it straight. And he's 16, very immature. Just kidding. You know, you could be mature and be 16, but that's aside the point. All right. So now Gradebook has both of these objects. Let's run the program. All right, the application ran, nothing happened, and it returned 0. Exactly what we'd expect. Okay, application closed itself because it did everything I asked, and then it died. That's exactly what I wanted. So now let's NSLog and find out how many entries are inside of the gradebook. So if I NSLog, I can go my gradebook, and then inside there I made an array. I forgot what it was called. It was called my people. My people. And then, so now I have access to it, and I actually want to call it. So make another one of these, and I could say get objects. No, that's not what I want to do. Let's look through here and see, is there a length property? No, I have last object though. I'll return the last object I put in there. Let's see. See, I'm doing this because I'm trying to show you there's many different things you can do with a mutable array. Count. All right. Now this is going to provide me with a very short, simple little error. I'm probably actually a warning, not an error, but here, hold on one second. Let me count these. I got 1, 2, 3. There we go. It didn't yell at me. Let's run real quick. Oh, it did yell at me. All right. There we go. Still yelling at me. Hold on one second. I'm counting these wrong. Let me do this again. One sec. All right. All right, so I want my gradebook, and then I want, what was it called again? It was called my people. And then from there, I want count. Now we get a warning. Perfect, that's what I want. So count is a literal. It's a unsigned number. So I want you to actually, I'm sorry, unsigned long. So what it's saying is saying, well, you're telling me that you're going to put an object here, but actually we're expecting a unsigned long. So it's going to put %lu type depth this to unsigned long, and it's going to run. And notice what happens here. This is rather interesting. It says that there is 0 people inside of the array. Think about it. Why do you think that there's 0 people inside of the array? Well, if you think about it, 0 is this in Objective-C is a null pointer. Okay? So it's saying that the count is 0, but actually what it's really saying is it's saying that my people is 0. Because this array was actually never created. So if you go back into the implementation, notice I just say my people add object my people. Well, over here in Gradebook, I never initialize this array. Now there's certain things you don't have to initialize, like NS strings and NS numbers, but NS mutable arrays, you have to alloc init them. So for example, in Objective-C, instead of using an initializer, we use what's called lazy instantiation. Lazy instantiation is actually kind of cool in a way. It's very lazy, but it's cool. So what you do is you go if, and I'm not sure if I need the underscore. I'm pretty sure I do. So I say, let me try it like this first. Nope, I need the underscore. Okay, so I say if my people doesn't exist, then I say underscore my people equals NS mutable array. Forgot the extra. Now whatever, I'll do it. Yeah, hold on. There we go. And I allocate it in the heap. Then I initialize. Now notice I can initialize with different things. I can initialize with a standard array, many different types of things. Well, or I could even initialize it with objects and many different objects with commas and stuff. I'm not going to do that this time. I'm just going to do a regular init. Nice, beautiful blank array. And now it's initialized. Now you may say, why in the world is this in an instance method? Well, I could create an initializer, but we don't code like that in Objective-C. We do lazy instantiation. If something doesn't exist, initialize it. There's no reason to initialize something unless you're going to use it. After I've coded in C++ and many other languages, I think this is actually the most efficient because this is a very small CPU calculation, if this is null or not. That's pretty much what that is saying. But on the other hand, you're having to initialize all these classes and methods. Give me a break. That's a lot of memory, and that's a lot of CPU power if you have a big application. Lazy instantiation just works very well. So now if I run the application, well, hold on, let me get rid of that. You wouldn't have had that. All right, so 2. Now it has 2 things in there. Well, if I go back to main, sure enough, I added 2 things. I added Jared and I added Mark, and it's inside there. Pretty cool, huh? So far in this tutorial, I've showed you how to create an array, how to create instance methods. Now, real quick, I do want to show you class method because I was talking about it. I'm not going to do much with it. I'm just going to show you it real quick. A class method is actually very simple. So, for instance, I could create a class method in this header file by creating a plus, and I'm going to return an NS integer. Okay, and I'm going to call this class method, I'm going to call it add to numbers. I'm going to pass in NS number, and I'm going to call it A with second number, NS number, okay, I'm going to call this B. Copy this, and place this. And then I'm going to create an NS integer. And I'm going to call it total equals NS integer. You know what? I'm not even going to alloc init it because you don't have to with this. Because if you look over in Gradebook, you have properties and stuff. If I do, I will. So let's go back to where I was. Actually, you know what? just C. Might as well. Now notice the inits you have are not, you can't really initialize this. And that's very simple because there's nothing to initialize. It's an NS number. Although it's a class, you're not having to initialize it. You can just keep it very simple, and you can say NS number with int, I'm going to say 0. And notice right here, it's confused again. Implicit conversion of an Objective-C pointer to an NS integer is disallowed with automatic reference counting. Think about that for a second. What I wanted to show you is an NS integer cannot necessarily come from an NS number. It doesn't really work like that. If you hold down the Option key, see how this blue question mark comes up? Notice it pops up and it says typedef long. So really an NS integer is just a long, right? So this actually isn't a class. If I wanted it to be a class, I could type NS number. And now if you notice, the error we have here is just an unused variable, which is what we want. And you may also notice, if you go NS number alloc init, you can now do that now, because now you're actually initializing a class. So let's continue. All right, so in order to do this, it's not as simple as just saying total equals A plus B. It doesn't work like that. You'll get an error and it'll say invalid operands to binary expression, because what you're doing is you're adding two pointers together, and actually two classes of pointers, and that's not going to work. So instead what you need to do is you need to say total equals NS number and say number with int, and then once you have this number with int, put it in parentheses like that, and then call these two methods. Call A and then get its integer value, and then do the same, and then go plus B and get its integer value. And you may say, oh, wait a minute, implicit conversion from long to int. Well, true, but where is the pointer loss? Loss is integer precision. You see what I'm saying? So think about that for a quick second. Why is it giving a warning saying that there's a loss in precision from a long to an int? Well, the reason you're getting a warning is because we never really said this was a number with a something. We did that here, but the problem is we alloced and knitted it, and we didn't say init with number or anything like that. Actually, forgive me, I'm tired. I just came back from Calculus 3 class, but okay, this is fine. What I told you was wrong. This is fine. The actual thing is, remember I told you integer value was a typedef of a to long? It's integer value is actually typedefing as NS integer, which typedefs to long. So I can't get the integer value. So let's see, what can I get here? Int value, because if you see that returns an int, not an NS integer. My bad, guys, my bad. All right, so int value. So now that I do that, no errors, congratulations, we just have to return something. So I am actually going to not return an NS integer. I meant to return an NS number here. So let me go back into header. Change that. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to return total. Okay, so what this is doing is it's adding two numbers. It's getting an NS number A and it's getting an NS number B, and then it's combining them and returning them. So this is not a instance method, this is a class method. So if I go back to main, you notice how I had to create a gradebook to do all of this? Well, let's write this code before I initialize this gradebook. Let's create two numbers real quick. Actually, let's not even create two numbers real quick. Let's just go gradebook, and let's go add two numbers. Notice that this doesn't have to be initialized. That's because it's a class method. This is a static method. And I can add two numbers. Here, I can go NSNumber, number with integer 3, and then with second number, NSNumber, number with int 50. Come over here, it's going to say replace gradebook with gradebook. And that's just a case sensitivity error, my bad. All right, so let's NSLog that. %at u. So now this should output 53 before it outputs the rest of this, because it's going to output the gradebook as well. But if I run this, oh, build failed. Expression, expected expression. That's because I'm not paying attention. All right. 53u. What's that u? Well, that u is because I'm not paying attention. It needs to be, oh, I guess it wants, oh yeah, I forgot. It's not a literal, it's an object. Okay, so let's run. 53, there we go. So what I'm doing is I'm creating two NS numbers. NS numbers are classes, putting integers inside of them, and then this class method is actually calling all of this. And then notice I actually allocate a gradebook and I can do all my work with that. So the difference between a class method and an instance method is a class method is static, and an instance method requires instantiation, allocation, and initialization. All right, so I know I made a couple of mistakes and errors there, errors. I apologize about that. It's kind of late for me and brain's not working the best. However, I promise it will get better. Anyhow, if you guys can't, if you guys want more information, and I don't provide all of it, there's another guy out there, called Apple Programming on YouTube, and there's also Paul Hegarty from iTunes U. I hope I said that right. Those guys are two excellent sources of information. I've decided that I wanted to create tutorials because I felt like a lot of those guys out there didn't do the best jobs. However, those other two guys that I just mentioned are outright excellent. So if you need more information, go check them out. I will keep going and provide great information as well. But typically our tutorials won't last as long. If I go up here, it says that this current runtime is about 43 minutes long. Most of these advanced tutorials are supposed to only take like 15 to 20 minutes because you guys don't need a lot of explanation. However, this was quite a big introduction to the language. So as I said earlier in the beginning of these tutorials, I'm going to build up my beginner section. So if any of you guys were kind of lost and confused, check out the beginner section where I'm slowing down and I'm going through what I'm doing. I'm not talking about arrays, and I'm introducing people to programming with Objective-C. This is more for people that already have programming knowledge. So keep that in mind, and then after I teach both sides, these you guys may have less videos than them. Once both of you have the same amount of knowledge, I will then push them together and make a Cocoa, bunch of Cocoa videos where we go through and we actually make real applications that are graphic intensive and stuff like that. May even get into OpenGL and some of those foundations. So this will be very fun. Make sure to subscribe, leave a comment message if you want to see something, and thank you for tuning in. I really appreciate it. Have a great day.